thank you very much for the invitation to come and give a talk here. Just a few things I want to state to start off with. I do run a master's course in applied behaviour analysis in Bangor, North Wales, which is just across the sea there. I think it's that way anyway, maybe. We have 111 master's students at the moment, so please take some off me. You know, I'm starting to go grey, you know. It's an interesting story in a sense in terms of when what's happening, I think, because of master's level training. I know you've got a number of courses here in the north of Ireland and in Ireland as well, teaching behaviour analysts, and I think that is having one of the biggest impacts slowly on us as one of the helping professions, starting to get out there and help people in places we weren't working before, and that's part of what I'm going to talk about today. So just another aside that I hadn't planned to say, if you do get a chance to come and attend the workshop with Bill Hughes, he is, if you haven't seen him speak before, he is one of the best speakers around, so you should really try and come to that. And he is also going to be the keynote speaker at the EABG London conference next March. So he's going to be there as well. He's an inspirational speaker. And I just mentioned to Mickey as a whisper, he makes you feel inadequate as a speaker when you see him and you think, oh, if only I could be that good, you know. So I'll try my best. Okay, so what am I going to talk about today? I hope to talk about, we've got a number of PhD students and master students now doing research out in what we would call inclusive settings. So they might be special education units or units where children are failing academically. And I'm going to try and give you a flavour of the kind of stuff that we're doing in applied behaviour analysis, and I hope the message gets across. I'll tell you, I'll kind of show my cards right at the beginning. I hope the message gets across that applied behaviour analysis is not a limited scientific approach. It really has something to say about every aspect of education and with every population, and that's really the key message I want to try and get out. I think one of the things that's happening, because people are now able to spend 270 hours studying this approach, there are people coming out now with a real understanding of the breadth of possibilities that can come from applying behaviour analysis in many different domains. I'll give a few examples of where we're doing it. And I've tried to pick examples of our research myself and my collaborations have been doing in different areas to try and kind of give a feel for the breadth of that there. But first I'm going to talk about what applied behaviour analysis is and how we're trying to talk about it, especially to those people who aren't master students or studying as a scientific, people outside of our approach, who generally, almost universally in my experience, misunderstand what we're doing and our approach. But so I think we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Okay. And then I'll end trying to talk about inclusion and applied behaviour analysis. But I hope the examples of research will give you some ideas of how powerful this approach can be across a wide variety of settings. So we're trying to talk about applied behaviour analysis now as clearly one of the helping professions. That's what our core values are as professionals, I think, is to try and help people. Positive behaviour change, but although we define behaviour as the individual person, we recognise very clearly that what we're talking about is individuals, and individuals who are unique in terms of their biology, but also unique in terms of the history that they've experienced. So we need to come to any point where we're trying to help people with that as our starting point, that people are unique. What I'm also trying to say as well is that if you are helping people to change their behaviour in some way, you are adhering to the laws of learning. We cannot step outside of those. So ABA is not a set of procedures. It's not a set of tricks that we can pull out of the bag. If your child is learning, then you're adhering to the basic principles. The basic principles of what we've discovered in a scientific approach of trying to learn these principles. These principles weren't obvious. Okay? It's like Darwinian evolution. You know, for most of human history, We didn't think about evolution in that sense, okay? It took somebody to come along with a new idea. Now we tend to take it for granted. It's almost like, well, yeah, of course. It was the same when the early scientists, Skinner and all those, were discovering the basic laws of learning. We didn't think like that. Now we kind of have a new way of thinking about things. But anytime we change behavior, we're using the laws of learning. Those are the laws or the principles in which applied behavior analysis is based on. So it is about all human learning, okay? Generally, our approach is about changing people's environments, helping them develop functional skills, new skills that they didn't have before. And that's generally the approach that we take in applied behavior analysis. How can we help people develop skills that they don't have? Building skills. So we kind of came up with this sort of tentative definition of applied behavior analysis, which is not... actually, our goal when we came up with this was to use a definition of applied behavior analysis that doesn't use the technical terms. In other words, that might have some hope of being understood by other people or other professionals in a sense. So ABA is a values-driven, and that's about our values and trying to help people. Person-centered, every person is an individual. We have to start from that. That's our starting point. Developmentally informed in terms of what's the most important things for these people to learn in their present environment, in their present state. An effective use of these basic principles of learning that the scientific discipline has discovered. And how can we take this and develop curriculum or approaches that can help people in different circumstances? And that's what I'm really going to talk about in terms of the 3 research streams that I'm going to brief you on afterwards. I want to talk a little bit more about our values, and it kind of hits in with what Carola's just been saying about the title to this conference about ambitious. I think applied behavior analysts are generally, by their nature, ambitious for what they can do. Okay, so we approach every situation yearly saying, let's see what we can do. Can we help in this circumstance? And I think that's a very positive way to do. We emphasize ability to learn rather than disability. So we have a very clear idea that sometimes labels can hinder you in your application. It can give you an excuse for why somebody hasn't done something or can't do something. And we generally try to sort of be aware of those and not use those to guide us. Empowering individuals by establishing skills, building skills, and managing their own behavior. And I think one of the other key messages I wanted to talk about today was, certainly from our perspective in North Wales, most of the good work that's happening now in North Wales that is being informed by applied behavior analysis is happening in the schools where our graduates or people who have come on our courses are now working. And they're showing people, hey, you know what, if you just see what we can do, we can help in lots of different situations. And so there are people out there now doing really good work. And that's where it's starting to change opinions, because head teachers, LEA professionals, lots of what the head teachers called sector leading, that's what they want, certainly in North Wales. I don't know if it's the same here. But they want to tick the box of sector leading practice, stuff that nobody else is doing. And making a difference where other approaches perhaps weren't making a difference. So that's where I think we are powerful and we can help an awful lot in helping people know what to do in certain circumstances by using the basic principles of learning that we're all part of. We don't step outside of those. That's it. It's about all of those learning principles. So collaboration, I think, is the key aspect of that. And that's one of the ways we're trying to talk about applied behavior analysis in a different way. So another way we're talking about applied behavior analysis now in North Wales as well is in terms of this idea about evidence-based practice. Okay, so from the very beginning, we know as applied behavior analysis, in 1968, we were defined as an evidence-based practice approach. Okay, 1968 that was. Okay, that was a long time ago. It was a year before I was born. Now you know. If you can do maths, that is, of course. And if you can't, I've got some things that might help you afterwards. So evidence-based practice is really about taking what we know or what there's good evidence and evaluation of to work and bringing it in as your starting point. Okay, so you've got a problem, you've got an issue that's happening. You say, okay, what's the evidence for what works in this particular problem or issue or context? Okay, so taking that and then saying, okay, this is where we are at. Now, the other side of evidence-based practice is what we come to talk about as practice-based evidence. Now, this is where applied behaviour analysis is very, very strong. In other words, we've had a very, very clear ambition from the start to have an approach that takes ongoing data to know whether what we're doing is working. Okay, that's called practice-based evidence. In other words, when you start doing something, or you're intervening, or you're teaching a child something, you're taking regular and frequent data points, information, measurement on whether or not that's working. Okay? If you do that, you find yourself in a data-informed approach that is accountable and self-correcting. If you do take data as you're going along, if you take this kind of more scientific approach about practice, then your practice must change and adapt to individual children, to individual learners. There's almost a natural selection going on within that data-based practice approach, if that makes any sense. So ABA, a sort of mantra in ABA is this working for this person? If it is, carry on doing it. If it's not, do something else. And in some ways, it's kind of that simple. Yeah? But if you're taking regular measurements of learning or practice outcomes, then you can do that. You can change. You can adapt in whatever circumstances. So evidence-based practice, practice-based evidence, sort of key terms that actually most other professions go, yeah, I kind of get you on that. I understand what you're coming from. Okay, so it's just a kind of interesting way where we can meet other professions. I also want to talk about, if in the context of what ABA is, I'm going to talk about what ABA is not. Okay, and again, this is probably talking about some of the common misunderstandings that I come across when I'm teaching students and dealing with other professionals. ABA is not just an intervention for autism, okay? Most of ABA people work in autism. It's been particularly successful in that area. But it's not just about autism. My approach, most of my research is not within the autism population, but some of my colleagues, that's where they do. They're consultants with children with autism. But it's not just about autism. It's about safety in the workplace. It's about learning for children who are failing in schools, typically developing children. It's about children with learning disabilities. One of our big interests in North Wales is now there are hundreds and thousands of children with learning disabilities in the UK who could benefit significantly from what we can do. Significantly. In other words, it'll change their lives. And I think that's what's happening in North Wales now. It's changing people's lives. I joke about my master's course and I say, this is the course that changes lives. And it does. It changes lives. And I hope I show, if I don't rabbit on too much, I hope I've got some time to show some videos of some children who I think we've changed their lives. It's not about an intervention just for children. A lot of my work now at the moment is working with adults in high-risk environments who have to be safe. They're working in the nuclear power industry. They have to do things safely. Okay? Applied behaviour analysis has something to say there. How can we teach people to do the right thing and not take the shortcut that will put them and other people at risk? That's about behaviour, what they do. It's not just about individuals. There are a number of approaches, I'll talk about one today, that have attempted to take the basic principles of learning and expand them in their scope and complexity to make wide-scale implementation. So there's positive behaviour support, school-wide stuff happening in the USA. So not just about individual children, but trying to take this technology so it impacts whole schools and whole counties in terms of significant behavioural issues, like truancy and knife crime, gun crime, and all of these kinds of things. So not just about individuals, although the focus is always about an individual. If that makes any sense, it sounds paradoxical, but it's about scaling up as well, taking the technology to scale. It's not just about intensive interventions. We haven't got the resources in North Wales, and I'm sure it's the same here now. Lots of my graduates are now working in special needs educational settings in North Wales, and they'll have a couple of hours to work there a day. That's all the funding requires, but they're having massive impact within that time. Okay? So we can still do good work, even though we haven't got complete control over what's happening all day with a child. We can still do good work within a short period of time. And again, some of the stuff I'm showing today are curriculum-focused approaches. In other words, we're trying to go in and solve a specific problem. And it's not about comprehensively thing. And that's just where we find ourselves in our context. We're working with other professionals in the same way. Actually, most other professionals work like that. Speech and language therapists, work on consultancy basis, and that's how. So ABA is inclusive. It's about all of what we do. When we define behaviour and behaviour analysis, it's everything we do. And so our application of that basic science should and can work across the board. It's about all of our human learning and behaviour. So, I'm wondering how long I've taken to do that. Okay, I'll try and speed up a little bit. I'm going to talk to you about three kinds of interventions today. One of them is a very focused intervention for children with autism with a specific problem. In other words, we were finding, and I'm sure you find this, that children in free play environments, out in the yard, in school, in inclusive settings, generally wander around on their own. And they don't talk to anyone else. They don't talk to other children. They don't initiate conversations or initiate play. So we were looking at some around the research around ways that might help children start initiating conversations with other children. So there's a couple of studies. We've done 3 or 4 studies. I'll show a few graphs afterwards. Being a scientific approach, I hope you don't mind me showing a few graphs. I will show some graphs, but I also learned from Mickey a long time ago that graphs don't do it. And what we need to see is the real people. So I'm hoping to show you a bit of video of what those graphs mean in real life as well. So a tactile prompt is essentially a small vibrating device. I'll show you a photograph of this in a minute. It's called a motivator, and it can be used for all sorts of things. Like, for example, keeping yourself less stressed. So if you find yourself particularly stressed, you can wear one of these devices. And then whenever it goes out, you kind of sort of say, okay, just relax. Okay? This is what I do before I'm doing big talks like this. Although I forgot to bring it with me, so that's why I'm all tense. Okay, so the background to this is one of the core difficulties of children with autism is, of course, socializing with other children and enjoying that socializing, finding it reinforcing. One of the core deficits, verbal imitations, is a noted deficiency in children with autism, so they generally don't go up to other children and start initiations. And we know that from typically developing children, it's about 2 initiations per minute. So if you watch typically developing children, they'll be interacting with each other. What kind of things do you like to do? Can you come and play with me? Did you see that program last night? Or what, have you got any pets? These kinds of social interactions that we were finding with the children that we were working with, they weren't making these interactions. So a couple of studies that we'll talk about. An ABA design basically means that we go from a baseline, take some measurements about how is the child doing without our intervention. Because we're a scientific approach, we're trying to develop evidence of what we're doing is working. Okay? Then the B in this is essentially we intervene, we do something. And then we go back to baseline and say, well, if we take away what we're doing, does the child go back to where they were? And then, so that's how the ABAB thing kind of works in a practical setting. So essentially what we did with these children is we trained them that when they hear the vibrating device in their pocket, they're to look around for another child and go up and make some conversation with them. Okay? And there has been a research literature on this happening. So we kind of followed the research on what might work in this situation. The device there on the left is the motivator. It's a small pocket device that you can buy on the internet for about $20, I think, and it can mess around with all this kinds of time schedules that you can use with that. And we had it on a 1-minute schedule, so every time it vibrated, the child would go off and look for another child. We also used what we call a token economy, which is a reinforcement system where the child got tokens that they could spend on things they want at the end of it. And this is the basic procedure. We also give each child a rule card, and again this comes from the literature of other studies around social stories and giving children things to say. So this is an example of one child's. This depends on the child and their verbal ability at that point in time, but this is an example. Where do you live? When is your birthday? Can I play with you? Do you have any pets? What's your favorite TV program? So examples of things that might initiate interaction with children, other children in the yard. I'll show you a bit of data. So this is what an ABA graph looks like if you're not familiar with them. The round circle data points are the initiations that the child that we're focusing on is making to other children, and the triangles are the initiations other children make back to that child, so that you can see that these children are essentially alone and having no interaction with other children within the free play situation. So this is in an inclusive play yard in a school in North Wales, essentially where other children are playing around, and you see the one or two children wandering around on their own and never interacting with any other children. And that's the sort of flat line at the bottom there. Then we teach the children these techniques of trying to initiate conversations, and you see that their initiations go up. Slightly goes up as the responses back from peers, and then when we take it away, it goes down again. So what we're demonstrating there, in a sense, is that the control over the child's behaviour, or the influence over the behaviour, is the actual device. Now, and then we reintroduce the tactile prompt, and the responses go back up again. This is another participant in the same study. A very similar thing happens. But one of the big problems, of course, with this study was that we essentially did not have time within the context that this was a research study that master's students take up. We didn't have time within this study to fade out the prompt. So in other words, the children were only initiating when the prompt was on, and that's not a situation that you would want to carry on. You would want the child to start to become under the control of, actually, I like interacting with other children, and that's why I'm going to do it. So we did the study again with introducing fading procedures at the end. So essentially what we've got here is the same situation where you've got a baseline tactile prompt, where it goes up, the number of initiations goes up within the 10-minute play period. We go back to baseline, demonstrating again that actually this is the thing that's influencing the child's behaviour, the vibrating device, the tactile prompt. We go back to introduce it, and then we introduced a fading thing. What a fading means essentially is that we reduced the vibration strength on the device gradually to the point where it wasn't vibrating. Okay? And what we find is that we can successfully reduce that to the point where the child is still making initiations with other children, still getting responses back from other children in the playground, but isn't doing so on the cue, if you like, or the prompt of the device. We then faded the reinforcement schedule. So one of the other things is we didn't want to happen is we didn't want a teaching assistant to be following the child around, reinforcing them when they speak to other children. What we want to do is that the actual contact with other children is what's driving their behaviour and influencing their behaviour. So we faded out the reinforcement, go back to baseline. So in other words, there's no teaching assistant around, there's no vibrating device. Does the child still initiate with other children? And we found that we were successful. We were still getting responses back from other children. And then we follow up again with no help, and children are now actually in the free play yard on their own, playing with other children, initiating responses to them. Same thing happened with the other participant in this study as well. So what we can show is that we can use some of these simple behavioural technologies to focus in on what a socially significant behaviour for children with autism. In other words, initiating with other children is socially significant for that child. We want them to be able to play with other children. But we need to apply the technology sensibly, and we need to get to the point where we introduce prompts and then fade them out so the natural environment is essentially the child is initiating in a natural environment without our help. So we come in, help the child to start this behaviour off, and then we pull ourselves out gradually. That's the general technique in terms of fading ourselves out. To our knowledge, we don't know of any other published study that's been able to show the fading out procedure and still have children initiate within the thing. So I think that's quite important, that we have a bit of new knowledge now about how that technology can work. The questions remain, though, and this is where we're kind of going with this. If anybody's interested in a PhD, this would be someone's whole academic career, I'm sure, is just on this one subject, is what are functional initiation repertoires? How do you keep conversations going? And I think a lot of the training might well be with typically developing peers and how they interact with children who might have specific issues in socializing with them. And that's where we're going next with that research, but I think important stuff. Okay, so that's sort of one very focused, sort of what we call a single case design, very focused on a specific kind of approach. I'm going to take it to a completely different area now, and this is reading instruction and thinking skills. Now, most people will say, what? Applied behaviour analysts doing reading stuff? But they don't do that stuff, do they? Yes, we do. This is a program I'm going to talk to you about now called, am I on tape now? I am, aren't I? It's called Mimio Reading, but it was formerly called Headsprout, so you might well have heard of Headsprout before. It's now called Mimio Reading. This is the first time we've, in public, used the correct new name. It was something of a, I liked Headsprout. It had some meaning, you know, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, I can get that. Someone's head sprouting kind of thing. Yeah, I liked it. Mimio Reading doesn't really mean anything. Anyway, that's the name of the new company, Mimio Reading. And there's two basic programs here. Now, to put this in context, we had about 12 or 13 years ago a group of behaviour analysts, instructional designers, cartoonists, computer scientists came together, and it cost $12 million to develop an online adaptive interactive reading program that will teach a child from beginning to the age of a typical 8 or 9-year-old reading age. Okay? Now, this is the computer doing the teaching. All you need to do is make sure your child's in front of the computer and doing what the computer wants them to do, and they will learn to read. They took what we knew at the time as being the most effective way to teach reading. Now, if your child is being taught in a school to read and they're being taught properly, they're probably doing the same sorts of things. Okay? So it's about phonics instruction, phonemic awareness. I'm not sure if I've got a slide on that anyway. The second program, sorry, I'll go back. The second program is about comprehension skills. Now, I think it's even more impressive what they've done with this program. And if I've got time at the end of this, I'll show you a bit of video of someone using the comprehension program. A child with autism. A common problem that we've found with children with autism who've gone through Headsprout in our research programs, they're able to go through the program. They're able to learn to read and decode and things, but some of them still have problems with understanding what they're reading. So that you might have come across the phenomena where children can decode perfectly, stick anything in front of them, and they can decode these squiggly lines and come out with the words. But they're actually not engaging with what's happening. In other words, they're not understanding what they're reading. And that's where the comprehension program comes in. They've done a task analysis, essentially, in terms of behavioral terms, of what it is that we do as fluent readers when we understand text. Now, when I tried to start thinking about this, I thought, I do not know what I'm doing. I really don't know what kinds of things I'm doing when I'm understanding text. Well, they've done an amazing job of breaking those skills down into the basics. And hopefully, if I've got time, I'll show you what they do. So going back to the Mimio Reading program, the program that is 80 lessons, average about 20 minutes. It costs about $180 to buy the license. Mimio have, because they're scientists, they're behaviour analysts who developed this, they've always been interested in the research evidence for their program. So in all the research studies, we've done about 17 research studies now across 3 different populations: mainstream children, children with autism, and children with learning disabilities. That's what I'm going to talk to you about a bit today. They've given us free licenses for all of the research we've conducted. And in repayment for that, we try and do good research. And we try and publish the research. We've got two published articles in press at the moment, and we present our work at conferences. And they're, I think, happy with that relationship. They're interested as an organisation in developing the evidence for their programme. It takes non-beginner reader to age year 3, 7 or 8-year-old, in 30 hours of individualised instruction. Now, the individualised instruction is important to think about, because what this program does is every time a child clicks on the program in response to what the program's asking them to do, it logs that on the database and starts adapting to that individual child. Now, the most successful educational programs must adapt to individual children, okay? And that's why we're always saying in behaviour analysis, it's about individuals. You've got to focus on individuals, because we're all unique. This adapts to each child. So 2 children sitting side by side could go through this program, and within a few days, they're doing different things, because the program is adapting to each of them. So if a child's making errors on certain things, it will either give them more practice on that concept, or it will do what we call slice back. It will make the task easier. It will come back to an earlier task and give them more instruction and more help, and then start building back up again. So it adapts to each individual, which was why it was so impressive to us at the start when we started looking at this as an idea for research. It incorporates instructional design. There is a whole science of instructional design, how you should teach concepts to people. Okay, a whole science. Separate from behavior analysis in a sense, but behavior analysis has taken from it, about how we should teach concepts. They've taken from that, and they've taken from behavior analysis, certainly mastery level learning, or what we call fluency level learning. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Precision teaching, really. They've taken those ideas about building fluent repertoires. In other words, the basic elements of the skill need to be very fluent. Okay, musicians know this, martial artists know this, sports people know this, but we seem to be forgetting this in schools. You need to be fluent at the basics if you're going to get the complex stuff later on. Okay? Every other area of human performance knows this, but we seem to forget it in some educational thing. So there are 3 levels of the program. You either do the program and do the stories that go with it, or you do the program and the stories, and then you do targeted practice, which is essentially precision teaching practice skills, so building fluency on the stuff that the program's teaching you, the concepts the program's teaching you. And then there's the intensive practice for children who might need a little bit more help than that. And we've used different variations of this as an intervention for children in schools. So these are some of the schools that we've done in intellectual disabilities settings. So in other words, these are either special needs schools, or they're children in mainstream schools with special educational needs who are not learning to read. So we've completed a number of sort of small studies, pilot studies, if you like, and case studies with children with different levels of learning disability or intellectual disability. And at the moment, we're doing a randomized waiting list control design. In other words, we randomize children to either receive Headsprout or receive their teaching as usual within the school that they're in the setting that they're in. We're also using Headsprout learning reading comprehension with children who have finished Headsprout. So these are children who, well, I'll just move on to the data about children with learning disabilities or intellectual disabilities in the UK. 2% of children in special needs education will come out with functional literacy skills. For us who are ambitious, those figures are hard to take. And they're even harder to take now as we start to realise that actually these children can learn to read. And we can do it within the space of a couple of years in a typical classroom. Okay? And most of these children are in education for about 16 years and sometimes longer. So, to my mind, there is no excuse for failure on that one. Okay? And the more that we think about inclusion, how do we include children with intellectual disabilities in our society? Well, you know, these little things, these devices, these mobile phones, people are texting, Facebooking, it's all reading and writing. This is how modern teenagers communicate with each other, okay? And if your child cannot read and text and email and do all of those stuff, they're cut off, they're not included in that area. So it's even more important now, arguably, than it was 10 or 15 years ago. But there's still no excuse, especially for us who are ambitious about education in that sense. So very poor outcomes, essentially. Most children who go through special needs education, certainly in North Wales, will not come out functional readers. Okay? And it's kind of accepted. But one of the interesting things that I might come back to, I'm going to say it now actually, just in case I forget, is that what's happening now because of our students doing research in our local community and in our local schools and settings is that the expectations of the staff and the head teachers and the other people who work in those settings are now starting to raise. And now they're buying Headsprout licenses for all of their children across the school. One of the special needs schools in Llandudno, which is my hometown, a big special needs school for 180 children, has now employed somebody full-time to take their children through Headsprout to make sure they're reading. And these are children who have come from mainstream school and failed in mainstream school and come back into special education. And one of the big reasons they've come back into special education, and one of the big reasons they failed in inclusive settings, in mainstream settings, is they could not read. But they have to do the curriculum. They have to attend geography and history and science, but they can't read. But we can teach them to read using basic principles of learning in complex interventions. So our first questions really in this population, using it with this population, well, the first question is, can it work? Can you get this to work? It was designed for typically developing children, but it's got a very, very complex and effective learning algorithm built in within the program that adapts to individuals. So we thought, actually, you know what? I think it can. Even if these children need more instruction or more practice, we can get them through, and we've got the time. We don't need to rush this through. And if it does work, what kind of effect does it have on their reading ability? So we have, at the moment in this study, 22 children, mild to moderate learning disabilities, attending one of 3 special needs schools that essentially are around Bangor University. So these are the main schools that we interact with now in terms of our work with special needs children. Randomly allocated, again, this is us as researchers trying to develop the evidence. Okay? So some of the children will be in a waiting list control. In other words, if this works, and it has worked, they're starting to get this now. So they're not getting it, they're just getting it a bit later. Yeah? Reading assessments, again, in terms of our inclusion as an approach in applied behaviour analysis, we also need to be mindful of how other professions view evidence. And some of the things that we need to do is engage with standardised measures and show change on standardised measures, because that's what other professions look for. They look for standardized measures. A lot of the time, we're interested in individual children and how they are improving on specific skills. But we also need to engage a wider community in terms of developing our evidence base. So we've used standardized measures that are typical within reading research. And these are some of them. So I'll show you some of the results of these children that have essentially, the prognosis for these children they would leave education not readers, not functional readers. Okay? So we've taken them within the space of 4 or 5 months through Headsprout with the help of very dedicated teaching assistants, engaged headmasters and head teachers, and we're taking them through and making huge differences in their literacy skills. From a technology, from Headsprout, that was developed from the basic learning principles. Okay, so this is that it's not just about autism, it's not just about behaviour problems, it's about learning principles. Anything we're learning. Okay? So this is diagnostic reading assessment. Significant change in the children with experience in Headsprout early reading. The red is the control children, as we expect. Pretty much nothing happens to those children at pre and post test. This is about 5, maybe 6 months between these tests. And again, on the word recognition and phonics skills, we say a similar problem, significant change in children who have experienced Headsprout and gone through Headsprout, but not in children who don't. Subscales of the DIBELS, which is the dynamic indicator of early reading skills. Essentially, it targets some of those basic skills in reading. So initial sound fluency, letter naming fluency. What you're looking at is the red control children pre and post, and the blue Headsprout children pre and post. Significant changes across most of these subscales of the DIBELS tests for children with mild to moderate intellectual disability. Children who would not have learned to read if it were not for this technology, or if we're not for good reading instruction. They can learn to read. We're changing the expectations. Interestingly, this is a comparison of the data of children 1,000 typically developing children who have done Headsprout reading program, and their average correct responding across episodes. So this program, the way this program works is if you fall below 90% accuracy within a lesson, you should repeat the lesson. If they notice as an organisation that children are starting to fall below that 90, they pull that lesson, and their instructional designers go to work on it again and say, what's wrong with it? And then they get real children in, and they test it, field test it, until it gets to a point where it's over 90% correct, every child that's doing it. So it's almost like an errorless learning, so it's very motivating for children. to go through. They're not making lots of errors, they're making lots of corrects, they're getting lots of reinforcement, and they're learning these skills really fast and in a sequential way. But what's really interesting is when we analyse the data between the children with typically developing children and the children that we run through our studies with mild to moderate learning disabilities, the data looks very similar, apart from the number of interactions that they have in the program. Now, what's also interesting is that most of these children, after completing Headsprout, have made anywhere from 18 to 24,000 interactions. And that's 24,000 opportunities to learn within the space of those 30 hours. That's massive quantity of interaction that you probably would never get in any other kind of educational setting. So this is one of the children doing the program. So our goal now, and the schools are taking this up now, is to get this program for every child with learning disabilities across the special needs schools in North Wales. Okay, to get this program, we're working with the LEA at the moment now to try and get them to spend some of their deprivation grant. All of the Welsh schools have just recently been given a windfall deprivation grant. £450 for every child that's on free school meals goes to the school. They've got to target literacy, numeracy, and closing the gap. So we're helping them use that money in a way that is effective. Increasing expectations within the school. This is one of the biggest impacts that we're having. Teachers and teaching assistants now believe that these children can leave that school learning to read, and they're determined that they do. So changing the impact, changing the expectations of what happens within these schools now. So lots of these children are now doing Headsprout learning comprehension programs. They're learning to understand complex text, and they are texting and emailing and writing to other people and communicating that way. So effects beyond their scores. I'm going to show you a bit of video of a young girl who I think is amazing, and I'll show you a video about her in a short while. And the functional impact on increased decoding skills. So in other words, what's happening now in one particular school, whenever a visitor comes to the school, they have to wear a name badge with their name, their first name on the badge, like this. And what they keep commenting on is that as they're walking past children are coming up to them and saying, "Hiya, Mickey. Hiya, Corolla." They're reading the name badges and interacting with them in that way. Fantastic stuff. Okay, this is Janet Twyman, who's one of the founders of Headsprout Reading, or Mimeo Reading. This is when she came over to Wales last year to see some of the research that we're doing. This is one of the schools, the head teacher, Emily, my PhD student, who's doing most of the Headsprout research now in North Wales, and Mike Beverley, some of you might know Mike, he's doing a PhD in precision teaching with us in Bangor University. This is Amber showing her, so I can show all the graphs that you want, and some people might, well, you know, graphs, whatever, but these are real people, and this is real impact stuff. This is Amber, a year ago, non-verbal, couldn't read a sound, and this is her showing us her completed Headsprout certificate. She's now a reader. She's working on writing skills now, and she wrote to us a little letter thanking us for Headsprout. And her mother wrote a little letter, and I think there was almost tears on the letter for how much this has changed her life. She walks around the supermarket now reading labels. Okay, challenging behaviour also reduced significantly with this young lady. But she thinks of herself as a reader now. And this is the young lady I want to show you. This is Alex. This is Sian Lee on the left. Her teacher, an amazing teacher, and Janet is her teaching assistant. Without these collaborations and the dedication and passion of these people, this stuff wouldn't be happening. And that's, again, about this collaboration with other professions is so important. It's the basis, really, of all of our work that we're doing in North Wales now. You know, I was saying yesterday at Coleraine when I was talking to the master's students, actually what we do is we kind of influence, when we have people on our course, we kind of influence their ideas, but they're the ones that go off and do the good stuff. Not us, not the academics in the university. staying there, in front of their computers and stuff. I think that's what's happening in North Wales. It's the people we're influencers are out there doing good stuff now. And it's all about collaboration. So I'll show you a video of Alex in a minute. How am I doing for time? 5 minutes? 5. Okay, so fluency and precision teaching. I'm going to show you some fluency about going through some slides now. This is how fluent I can be. This is to widen the scale about. So it's not just about children with learning disabilities. It's not just about children with autism. This is about typically developing children who are failing at maths in schools in North Wales around our area. So these are children who are called the maths avoiders, or physically contract when maths comes about. We say, physically do this. It's like, oh God, here we go again. We might have some of you in the audience. Quite a lot of people are like this, actually. So we're using basic fluency building procedures. The way we think about it in precision teaching is that complex skills are built on elements. We think about things very simply in some ways. And if you're good at doing the elements, you're going to be good at doing the complex stuff that they're built on. That's what we do. We go in and make sure that I'm going to flip through this. You kind of know the details, I think, about literacy, numeracy skills. Basically, it's pretty poor. Certainly in Wales, 53% of adults in Wales do not have level 1 numeracy. That's the typical sort of 9, 10-year-old. So in this study, we took 19 children across a few schools. We had some 10 control children who were similarly struggling but had the waiting list control, so they had the precision teaching after our study had finished. And we took some of the basic skills. We tested these children beforehand and found out actually they were fairly disfluent at some of these basic components of later numeracy skills. So writing digits, confusing 7 and 2, and 5 and 7, writing the 9 the wrong way around, writing very slowly, missing numbers out, all of these kinds of things, disfluent. These are 8 and 9-year-old children, in a typically developing children. So we took them back to the basics, and essentially for 3 20-minute sessions a week, take them out of their maths class, build fluency with flashcards or practice sheets, simple stuff, and then the children take their own fluency data. In other words, how fast can I do this? How good am I getting this stuff? This is the graph on writing digits for the group. So what you're seeing there is an improvement graph. Anything that goes up above the 0 is improvement from pre to post test. Each of those bars is an individual child. Okay, so precision teaching and control children. The dotted line there is what we call the reliable change index. This is a measure that we're taking from medicine, and we're using it now in some of our educational research. It's a way that other professions kind of sometimes look at the impact of intervention, certainly within health professions. So in other words, basically speaking, what the reliable change means is there significant change in this over the period of the study? And significant change means that these children have moved more than 2 standard deviations from where they were. And that's significant change. So if they were in the middle of a normal distribution, they would be in the top 5% after 2 standard deviations. Significant educational change. And what we find is that most of the children within this thing do have significant educational change. Simple procedure, simple technology. So a world away from something like Headsprout. This is simple stuff that anyone can do in the classroom. But it's basic learning principles applied to specific important tasks. Addition. These are the 2 skills we worked on within the study. It was only 4 weeks, this study. We didn't work on addition that was above 10 and between 20 and 10. Okay, so what we see is a very similar thing. So these children didn't improve on those, any significant difference to the control children. But what's interesting, and if any of you know about number bonds, or the number families, we'd worked on addition, we hadn't worked on subtraction. But the subtraction increases. This might be an example of what the precision teachers call contingency adduction. In other words, taking skills in one area and using it in another. The blue graph there, this young boy was a maths avoider. He would physically shrink when the teacher started to do maths. At the end of this 4 weeks, he's putting his hand up like this and asking us for sheets to take home because he was practicing with his parents. 2 minutes. Gosh. So, what's the message? Brief interventions, simple technologies, using precision teaching, can have a big impact on these basic skills. On reading, we've done stuff on reading, we've done stuff on maths, and we've done across populations. It's simple, it can be introduced into any classroom, and it gives you that evidence-based practice, but the practice-based evidence. Is this working for this child? Is this child getting better by taking frequent? All of the schools now around Bangor have SAFMed corners. Okay? If you're from precision teaching, you'll know what SAFMeds are. My students do this. My students learn facts on flashcards because I need them to be fluent at using them. Okay? We've done it in statistics with undergraduate students because students often fail with statistics. We've done it with children with learning disabilities. We've used it with children with maths and reading, and it's an effective, low-tech technology. And they're in every school in North Wales now. You hear teachers come in and say, "Oh, I use SAFMeds." I'm like, okay. Or they even come to me and say, "Do you know about SAFMeds?" And I go, "No, please tell me." Inclusion in ABA. So this is kind of the model we're working on, is that all of the work that we're doing is predicated on good relationships, I think, with other professionals. And this is kind of the parents are in red, because I think actually if we're going to be critical, we don't do a lot of work with parents, and some of our research studies now are going to try and target that, bringing parents in for helping their own children with academic tasks. So how can parents help their own children with their homework and with learning at home, with reading and maths and things like that. So that's something we're going to work on. So ABA is about ambitious for all. It's not just about children with autism. It's basically about learning. And we can help. Whenever there's learning happening, we can help. We have the technologies. None of these projects would be possible without significant positive collaborations with other professions. Teachers, teaching assistants, head teachers, speech and language therapists, in particular in North Wales. That's been a very powerful relationship between us and speech and language therapists, occupational therapists as well. If we can get, and what's happened is a bottom-up, essentially, all of the graduates are now working in, graduates from applied behaviour analysis masters are now working in most of the educational settings in North Wales around Bangor. They're having big impact, and people are seeing what they can do. They're employing them, and they're asking for behaviour analysts to be employed within schools. So we have a big job and a big something big to offer if we can do that. We've also had significant. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go on a little bit longer. Sorry. Significantly in this is that we've had other professions come on our master's courses, and they've sat through those classes and actually understood what we're trying to say. You can't do that from short courses in a one-day class or a two-day class. You need to understand this is a maturing science. It's been around for 50, 60 years, probably longer. We know a lot of stuff about learning, and it takes time to learn that. So inclusion means not being exclusive, being collaborative, and being effective communicators. So I'm going to skip to this because I want to show you this. Now, I couldn't have a talk here without showing a standard acceleration chart. Now, what this shows is this young lady I showed you a photograph of before called Alex, and she's got severe cerebral palsy. Essentially, the only thing she can control is the movement of her eyes. Okay? That's all she can control. This is the data for her when she got her new Echo Point, which is a device, an amazing device that calibrates where her head is in real time and will move a computer mouse, a cursor, with her eyes, so she can control the cursor. Okay? So we started Headsprout with her. She essentially is 14 years old and has essentially been locked inside her own mind for all of those years, never been able to communicate significantly with other people. That's the graph of her using her device over many months. We went down from essentially weekly scores of around about 10 to using it about 500 times a week. So 500 times that she's using her Echo Point device to use the computer. That's using Headsprout reading program. Okay, that's a graph. It doesn't mean much to anyone. It means lots to me. It makes me warm and fuzzy. But this is Alex learning to read. At the same stop for half a second, it clicks. Otherwise, if she moves around, it follows her eye gaze.
Great. Good.
And Alex is her real name. The mother wants us to use a blue name.
Could. Could.
I also had to get some Welsh in there as well, I think. Anyone want to try? Who said this? Batman, our favourite superhero. We are what we do. Okay, so we need to go out there and help people. And it's in the joined space of our shared values as helping professions where we can communicate, I think. Thank you.